STURM-RUGER Company Incorporated is one of America's leading manufacturers of rugged, reliable firearms for the commercial sporting market. STURM-RUGER Incorporated is better known by its short name Ruger, which will be utilized in this strategic plan. Ruger is America's largest gun manufacturer, second in pistols only to Smith & Wesson, and first in rifles. Is the only gun manufacturer publicly traded on its own and not as part of a parent company. Ruger makes semi-automatic pistols, revolvers, bolt-action rifles, semi-automatic rifles, and even single-shot rifles. At one time, Ruger also made shotguns. Let's talk a moment about its beginnings. William Ruger was $40,000 in debt as his hand tool producing company was financially insolvent. However, a small handgun purchased from a World War II vet would literally change his fortunes. After purchasing the Japanese Nambu pistol, Ruger duplicated it. This inspired him to try his luck in the handgun market. Drawing on the design of both the Nambu and the German Luger, William created what would become known as the Ruger Standard. With his new business partner, Alexander Sturm, bankrolling the production at $50,000, Ruger Incorporated began in 1949. This first pistol, this .22 semi-automatic pistol, was an instant success. By January 1 of 1950, over 1,100 of these had been shipped to customers, and by the summer of 1950, there was a backlog of 9,000 units, with only 1,000 being produced monthly. Currently, Ruger offers almost 800 variations of more than 40 product lines, including the highly popular and all-time best-selling 10/22 semi-automatic rifle, with over 5 million being manufactured. Ruger's mission. Ruger focuses on serving our shareholders, our loyal customers, and our employees. We strive to produce high-quality products demanded by our customers as efficiently as possible, which provides long-term value for our customers and promotes the interest of customers, employees, and shareholders alike. Their vision is to deliver quality and innovative firearms. Let's take a moment and look at their corporate performance and financials. We're going to look primarily at 2019 and 2020. Because although Ruger has been financially stable for years, 2020 was so much better than even 2019, where they had profits. For example, in 2019, their sales revenue was $411 million. But in 2020, it was $569 million. Their net income in 2019, $32 million. Net income in 2020, $90 million. Their earnings per share in 2019 was $1.85, whereas in 2020, it was $5.17. Their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization in 2019 was $69 million, but in 2020, $147 million. Their year-end stock in 2019 was worth $49.54, whereas in 2020 it was $68.15. Obviously, Ruger's done a great job financially and is obviously moving forward. And that's in large part due to their corporate governance and their board. Ronald Whitaker is the chairman, and John Casentino Jr. and Michael Pfeiffer are the vice chairman. Sandra Froman and Michael Jacoby also serve on the board, as well as Christopher Killoy, who is actually the president and CEO of the company, and yet, while he reports to the board, he's also part of the board. Terrence O'Connor, Amir Rosenthal, and Philip Weidman serve on the board as well. In order to serve on the board, one must have the highest personal and professional ethics, strength of character, integrity, values. One must be accustomed to successfully dealing with complex problems or have obtained and excelled in a position of leadership. Have sufficient education, experience, intelligence, independence, fairness, reasoning ability, practicality, wisdom, and vision to exercise sound and mature judgment. One must have the stature and capability to represent the company before the public and the company's shareholders, and possess the personality, confidence, and independence to undertake full and frank discussion of the company's business assumptions. One must be loyal to the company and preserve and protect corporate assets at all times. In identifying potential new board members, the Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee considers, among other things, career specialization, technical skills, strength of character, independent thought, practical wisdom, mature judgment, and cultural, gender, and ethnic diversity. Let's take a moment and look at the external environment. We'll use PESTLE to look at this environment. First of all, looking at P, the political environment. Perhaps no industry, with the exception of the abortion industry, is as politicized in the United States of America as the firearms industry. One need only look at the platforms of the two major political parties to see the political divide. The Republican Party and platform is clear and unashamed of its support of gun rights. The Democratic Party is just as clear with regard to gun restrictions because of gun violence. Ruger must keep a healthy eye on the political environment for the foreseeable future, especially since the Democrats control both the executive and legislative branches of government currently. Now let's look at the economic environment. The recovery, which began in the last quarter of 2020, is paving the way for a strong economic outlook. In fact, the Federal Reserve has acknowledged a stronger path. It's upgraded its median growth forecast for 2021 to 6.5%. That's up from 4.2% just 3 months earlier in December. Perhaps the strongest indicator for the United States economy is the GDP, which is expected to rise 6% this year, making its strongest percentage growth increase since its largest one back in 1983. Let's take a moment now and move to the social environment. There was a poll taken of interested voters, and 63% of those voters surveyed said they would prefer to live where individuals are allowed to own guns, whereas only 26% said they would prefer to live where guns are outlawed. While polls do not equate to revenue for firearms manufacturers, gun sales do. In 2020, gun sales rose by an incredible 60%. Americans bought a record of over 21 million guns in 2020, which is more than 34% higher of any previous year. In short, the U.S. society is currently very financially hospitable for firearm manufacturers. And now let's take a moment and look at technology. Technology has long played into the success of gun manufacturers. Such technology includes the design and ergonomics of a gun, like the original Ruger standard, as well as the grip, recoil, trigger, system, sights, stocks, and barrels. A light gun with heavy stopping power and light recoil will always be appreciated. The lighter, more accurate, more dependable, more aesthetic, more powerful, and more comfortable the gun is, with less recoil, the more popular it will be. Research and design will continually be of utmost importance for firearm manufacturers. With regard to environmental, currently every state has conservation laws regarding hunting, And this is good. It preserves species, which in effect preserves and conserves the environment. With regard to larger environmental issues, interestingly, gun manufacturers have kind of flown under the green police, if you will, the green police radar. Why would that be? Well, there's numerous reasons, but a couple I'll mention. One, people may be more concerned with mass murders committed with the use of guns than other environmental concerns. And two, guns are not difficult to manufacture compared with computers or vehicles or other more difficult items, and thus they utilize less potentially hazardous waste during production. Now let's look at the legal environment. The Second Amendment. The Second Amendment protects citizens from much of the proposed gun restricting legislation. The Second Amendment states that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In the United States of America, constitutional law supersedes other types of law, including legislative and case law. Further, while more liberal federal district and appellate courts may seek to erode the protections afforded by the Second Amendment, the current makeup of the Supreme Court indicates that such erosion will not occur anytime soon. Thus, currently, the legal environment of states might be of more concern for gun manufacturers than the legal environment of the United States. However, such could change with just 2 appointments to the Supreme Court. Let's look at marketing efforts. Ruger has a vice president for marketing. This person is dedicated simply to marketing. He focuses on media buying, advertising, trade shows, which, by the way, Ruger just signed Doug Koenig, Smith & Wesson's former shooting captain, onto Ruger. And they're using him at their trade shows that this vice president oversees. He also oversees brand development and product launches. Well, we've kind of looked at the external. It might be wise to look a little bit at the internal. We'll use a SWOT. We'll talk about, first of all, strengths. One of the biggest strengths, largest strengths of Ruger is competent leadership. We have a great competent leadership team, beginning, as we've mentioned already, with Christopher Killoy, the president and CEO. Sarah Colbert, vice president of administration. Thomas Deneen, senior vice president of finance, the treasurer, and the CFO. Sean Leska, vice president of sales. Timothy Lowney, vice president of Prescott operations. We'll get to that shortly. Kevin Reed Sr., vice president and general counsel. And Thomas Sullivan, senior vice president of operations. As well as Robert Werkmeister Jr., vice president of marketing, and Randall Wheeler, vice president of Newport and Ruger engineered component operations. And finally, Michael Wilson, vice president of Mayodan operations. Other strengths include their broad product portfolio. Over 800 variations of 40 product lines. Another strength is manufacturing plants in different geographic locations. Another strength that's independence. Ruger is its own company. It's not dependent on a parent company. Another strength is their extension of the value chain back into metals for production use. Healthy company morale. But they also have a couple of weaknesses. While Ruger's brand product portfolio is noted as a strength, might also be considered a weakness, at least potentially. A broad line implies additional production cost and potential inventory costs. Another weakness of Ruger is its concentrated client base. But there are plenty of opportunities. Ruger could expand into shotguns, They could expand into ammunition, which, by the way, is selling faster than even firearms. They could expand into gun safes. They could expand into black powder rifles and crossbows. All of these marketed to the very group of customers that are already proud Ruger gun owners. Threats. Biggest threat for Ruger? Competition. But especially competition from foreign countries and Turkey. Turkey is producing very quality guns at very low prices because their production costs a lot less than here in the States. Ruger better keep an eye on competition, especially those coming from Turkey. The other threat, obviously, is gun regulations. When we talk about competitive advantages and core competencies, we're going to be addressing Ruger's competitive advantage, which is a best cost provider strategy. That is, they produce great quality at lower prices. Some of their core competencies include quality, accuracy, dependability, ruggedness, and obviously their brand name. Well, we've looked kind of at the external and we've looked a little bit at the internal. Now we're going to turn and look at their structure, operations, objectives, goals, and policies. Ruger has 3 production sites. I'd mentioned Prescott earlier. That's one of them, Prescott, Arizona. Newport, New Hampshire, and Madison, North Carolina round out those 3 sites, which are all located outside of their headquarters in Southport, Connecticut. And each of these sites has its own vice president that works at headquarters. When one considers sales and marketing as part of finance, 80% of the corporate officers are focused on production and finances, with one vice president, another 10%, dedicated to legal concerns, and the last one focused on administration or fluidity. When we talk about financial objectives, Ruger is going to aim for some financial objectives over the next 5 years, with an annual increase of 5% revenues every year for the next 5 years, as well as 5% increase every year for the next 5 years of earnings per share, and a 5.10% annual increase of net revenues for the next 5 years. Strategic objectives. In the next 5 years, Ruger plans to increase manufacturing by 20%. They also plan to have a new line of shotguns, a new line of ammunition, a new line of gun safes, and CSR initiatives, as well as improved recoil technology. Now, let's mention some of the goals that they're going to utilize to reach their financial objectives. By 2025, their goal, if they reach those each year, will be $732 million in revenues by 2025. Their earnings per share, if they meet their annual goals, will be $665 by 2025. And their net revenues will be $117 million by 2025. As far as strategic objectives, by 2025, Ruger plans to be producing over 2 million firearms annually. That would be 884,211 rifles and 1,169,296 pistols and revolvers. In addition, they plan to have 100,000 shotguns by 2025 and be producing ammunition by 2025, like 22, 9mm, 357, 38, 30-06, 40, 223, 380, 270, 6.5 Creedmoor, and shotgun loads. They also plan to have 20,000 gun safes being produced by 2025, as well as CSR initiatives by 2023, and recoil technology in place by 2023. New recoil technology. Corporate policies. Ruger has a human rights policy, executive compensation clawback policy, political contributions policy, conflicts minerals policy, capital policy, governance guidelines, and code of business conduct and ethics. Now let's talk about their strategies at the corporate, global, and functional level. Since Ruger's business is gun sales, we won't get into the business level, rather we'll look at the functional, the corporate level and global. As far as global strategies, their main strategy is sales. Ruger actually has distribution in 41 countries. You heard me correctly, 41 different countries. And by the way, if they don't have a distributor in your country, you can always call them directly. And they even state this on the website. If your country's not listed, you can call this number. In addition to the global, their corporate is focused on production and marketing. That's the strategy at the corporate level, is production and marketing. We've already spoken about that a little bit with finance and production. And at the functional level, they have vice presidents over each production site. Now let's visit a little bit about their CSR, at least their future CSR, with regard to people, profit, and planet. As far as profit is concerned, Ruger will continue with their financial objectives. Obviously, a company is there for profit, and so they'll continue with their financial objectives. As far as people, Ruger will begin an annual philanthropic event to give back to people. And as far as the planet, Ruger plans on planting trees. They want to invest in planting trees in order to replenish the wood that's utilized in stocks. As far as their strategy and implementation, they are a best cost provider. And that strategy has served them well. And thus that strategy is implemented in their strategic plan for the next 5 years. That best cost, great quality, lower cost. And they're going to do this through their financial and strategic objectives, which they'll utilize their core team and their production, as well as their financial goals. But all of this will be accompanied by strategic implementation teams. And these teams will study the entry into shotguns, ammunition, gun safes, and then they'll give recommendations to Ruger on how to produce these things for profit. Well, obviously, from this presentation, you've recognized how amazing Ruger is. What a great, great company. And we've demonstrated that their strategic plan not only plays on the history that they've been, but it also prepares them for the future. I hope now with this short introduction to Ruger that you will obviously maybe invest in them or perhaps at least be aware of this great company. Thank you.